Zelensky calls for preemptive strikes from NATO to keep Russia from using nukes. Okay. Whatever, man. Zelensky says it's time for World War III. Everyone should burn in a rain of nuclear hellfire. He didn't really say that, but he may as well have said that. Volodymyr Zelensky called on NATO to conduct preemptive strikes against Russian targets to prevent their use of nuclear weapons in Ukraine, which literally would do the opposite. That's it. I kind of feel like he's actually just saying, it's the waiting I can't stand. Just burn it all to the ground. Because no sane, rational person thinks a preemptive strike against Russia would result in anything other than them launching nuclear weapons. So
I think Zelensky was throwing people in, I think he shut down TV stations. The three largest TV stations in Ukraine. I think he had them shut down because they were speaking out against him.
And political parties as well that were against him.
Yeah, he's not a good guy. Maybe was an actor, so he's got some charisma, but I don't think he's like a benevolent president by any means.
During a time of war, all the rules are out of the window. So, we have to understand, we're not fighting for democracy here. This is not a democracy.
But he shut those TV stations down before any Russian
I believe it was because of the war and the emergency powers that the government got. But again, all rules, everything's off the table once there's a war, and that's how he's treating the situation. His statements today, he's trying to, walk them back as much as he can. He's trying to say that he wanted to really call for preemptive sanctions, but there's a big distinction between preemptive strikes and preemptive sanctions. And he was specifically talking to an Australian think tank, the Lowly Institution. And these are big statements. The Russians are coming out and saying, well, these statements risk another world war. And these are very dangerous statements. And this is the trajectory that we are on unless there's some actual de-escalation, detente, and some real civil conversations that could actually pull us away from this lunacy.
You mean like Elon Musk?
Yes. At least he's trying. His proposal wasn't perfect, but at least he tried. At least he started the conversation. And now lunatic Lindsey Graham, the chicken hawk that he is saying that he's going to be taking away his tax credits, which he never got for his Tesla company. He never even had.
Someone's got to try. Someone's got to try to de-escalate. I guess I also wonder, why is he asking NATO to do a preemptive strike? Haven't we sent Zelensky $50 billion worth of weapons? Why isn't he doing it?
There are 3 Democrats who have now publicly stated that the greatest national security objective for the United States is to defeat Russia in Ukraine. They came out and said it. We're at war with Russia. They're just playing this game. It's not for Russia's benefit. Russia knows we're at war with them. It's because it's illegal. Because what they're doing violates the Constitution. They did not get congressional approval for this. So they're going to dance around. People ask, you've got U.S. personnel, veterans on the ground in Ukraine. We now have confirmation from The Intercept that U.S. boots are actually doing special operations on the ground. At what point are we just like, okay, dudes, we get it. You declared war on Russia.
Yeah.
But that's the game. Vladimir Putin knows full well what NATO and the U.S. are doing there. They're lying, saying it's just veterans being supplied and trained by us and then delivering weapons and training to the Ukrainians. The only reason they're saying that is because they're not legally allowed to do it, and they did. So criminals. Yeah. Criminals in the government.
Musk
that's new, right?
Yeah, that never happened before. Musk made another statement today when he was attacked by the Kiev Post. He said, look, I love Ukraine, but not World War III. And I think that's the sentiment for the majority of people right now looking at this situation rationally, as we're not really, this conversation, it's shared about online, but when we look at the mainline coverage, this is not really talked about as much, as significantly. The corporate media right now is focusing on 2 Russians that swam to Alaska to avoid the mobilization. That seems to be the biggest kind of story that you see on the main headline television networks. But you don't really hear about the dangerous implications. You don't really hear anti-war voices. You don't really hear anything contrary other than we need war. Let's play chicken nuclear war because it's fun somehow. And that's insane.
For the record, Zelensky shut down 3 TV stations in February of 2021, a year before Putin invaded.
Okay.
And they were pro-Russia, according to him. It was it's Russia. So they've really been at a pseudo-war since 2014. Since Putin annexed Crimea, that was pretty overt.
You guys know that the U.S. had an office of censorship during World War II.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Silence accelerates victory was their slogan. the motto, I guess.
Well, we put Japanese in internment camps too. I mean, we did a lot of stuff, right. As a part of the war.
Well, information is key. And, many times there was accusations against Germans. There was accusations against Japanese citizens that were providing allegedly information to the enemy. And the United States took it as far as to literally set up camps for Japanese people to be interned in, which was a step too far. And I think, during these situations, during emergency situations, we should always be careful not to take a step too far. And we have done it time and time again.
I'm watching this video, or I have been, of volunteers on the ground in Ukraine. American guy goes over with a helmet cam and he's recording it as he's running around fighting, like they're in combat. And they don't know who they're fighting. They don't know where the enemy is. They're just being told by a squad leader who's like a French guy, or like some Ukrainian dude. They got a French dude. So they just go place, they wait, and then they're like, if someone tells them, speaking of information being important, if someone says that's the enemy, fire, they'll just start shooting. They don't know.
Yep.
Yeah.
How many Ukrainian citizens do you think joined with the Russians? Something that they don't talk about in Western media, but of course they did, especially in the East. They probably said, we're with Russia on this one. Otherwise, I mean, they wouldn't have. It's just, I'll leave it at that. My question, and the reason I bring that up is, do you believe the Western media that Ukraine is winning?
This is, I think, a topic worth discussing, because we might see opposing viewpoints on this, as we were kind of talking about this subject before the show. There's a lot of circumstantial evidence. There's the understanding that there's a lot of propaganda, a lot of disinformation, but we also have to understand that the Ukrainians were practicing and drilling for this ever since 2014 on their territory. They have the latest technology. They have night vision. They have thermal. They have satellite technology. They have GPS coordinated weapons systems. They have training from CIA, covert ops, special forces soldiers that were there since 2014, setting up the groundwork for this invasion, as the U.S. corporate media was literally cheering on and setting the groundwork to make everyone hate Russia. So this has been in the works for a very long time, and I do believe, from just my initial perspectives, from what I've seen, and I know people are going to attack me. I got attacked last week because I said the Ukrainians are going to take the city of Lyman. The Ukrainians did take the city of Lyman. But from my perspective, looking at the Telegram channels, seeing footage from the Russians and the Ukrainians, it does seem, especially right now, that the Ukrainians are getting back a lot of the territory and are having some significant victories against what looks like a disorganized force with the Russians. That's just my perspective and my opinion, and I could be wrong, and I know I'm going to get criticized for it.
I don't believe the propaganda, but it's also not the Ukrainians. It's NATO. NATO is winning back these cities.
Yeah.
And
that's
Russia's not fully engaged, as far as I can tell, from what I've heard. I mean, they have not committed their entire military. He just raised another 300,000 people drafted. I think they drafted, conscripted.
Was that their first mobilization?
Well, in the mobilization, there's also a secret paragraph that hasn't been released to the general public. But also, Russia is facing stiff declines in their population, just like the majority of the Western world. Taiwan, the Ministry of Defense actually came out today and also said that they have a huge problem because of the low birth rates. They're not going to have anyone to join the military soon. So Russia is also facing a very similar problem. How many people are fleeing? That's contested. There's a lot of disinformation. There's a lot of propaganda, and a lot of it is just centered around Russia bad. The war, they're losing at 100%. That's not the 100% truth out of the situation. But again, we're in a war. The reporting has been just propaganda, and that's exactly what it is from now on.
Well, do you think that it's possible that the fact that Putin is talking about nuclear weapons is a sign that maybe he is losing?
Yeah.
Is that? I think that's a better indication to me than anything coming out of the media. Just I don't know if he'd be talking like that if
losing though, to the degree that he's engaged. I mean, the question is, has Russia utilized all of their forces to the maximum capability? Obviously no, because they have nukes. And then the question is, okay, well, aside from nukes, then, are they using their ground forces? Well, no, they just mobilized another 300,000. They could certainly conscript more people, so they've not even maximized in terms of ground troops. And then it's, if they really wanted to declare full-scale war, I mean, they don't even have to use ICBMs. There's a bunch of weapons they could and haven't used. There was video going out of them dropping incendiary bombs on a city. Why have they not done that in larger numbers on other cities? Because it looks like Russia is actually restrained right now.
Well, it looks like there's a lot of supply shortages. It looks like a lot of their main routes have been met with a lot of resistance. And there's also a lot of video footage showing, Russians fighting with, regular red book bags, fighting with no armor at all, fighting with old equipment. So again, how much of that is propaganda? How much of it is real? But I've seen similar reports and similar videos from the Russian side showing them fighting and having victories, but still a lot of them are under equipped. A lot of them don't have any body armor at all.
I think there was an expectation that they would move in from the east and that the people in Ukraine would open their arms and be like, kind of like what happened in Crimea, be like, well, thank you. Now we're liberated. We're back as part of Russia. We used to, they used to be part of Russia before the Soviet Union was split up. All of Ukraine, but it was underestimated the amount of psychological propaganda that had been proliferated in Ukraine and pro-West, pro-liberal economic order, and there was just massive psychological resistance. A lot of people thought Zelensky was going to flee as soon as the invasion was announced, but he was like, "No, I'm staying," probably because psychologically he was prepared because of all this NATO influence.
But also, Russia hasn't fully declared it as a war. They're describing it as a limited military operation. So we have to understand, attacks on the infrastructure weren't made by the Russians. The Russians could take out the electricity, the power, the water, and a lot of other, especially with their control of the nuclear facility inside of Ukraine. They haven't done that yet. So I think they're still holding back some cards that will make a greater impact on this conflict, not just nuclear warheads, but a declaration of a full all-out war.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.